from the CBO and the HHS department and so forth, but it gives a pretty close picture of where things are at. So just real quickly, on the right, starting the first 4 sections in green, which take up almost about 45% of the total, that's all employer-provided coverage. That's large group, small group, that also includes government employees, federal, state, and local employees, the military, the VA, TRICARE, and so forth. Anyone whose health insurance is provided by their employer, public or private, is covered in those sections over there. So that's almost half the country, okay? The ACA does impact those people to some extent, but not nearly as much as what you're usually hearing about has little to do with that, okay? The next sections, 5, 6, 7 in orange, that is Medicare, right? Most of that is people over 65, but some of it is also people who are under 65 but have certain disabilities, and so there's a couple different categories there. But basically, so that slice there, that's around 17% or so of the country on Medicare, right? Then in burgundy, 8, 9, and 10, that is Medicaid, not including the ACA expansion. Okay, this is pre-ACA Medicaid, people who are on Medicaid before the Affordable Care Act. And again, there's different categories there. And that's around 13, 14%, something like that of the country. And again, each of these categories, Obamacare, the ACA, it does impact them to some extent, but at sort of a lesser level. Then you get into the rest of the country. And I want you to pretend for a minute that those blue sections there, 11, 12, 13, and tiny little sliver 14, imagine that those are all red, okay? Because that would give you the situation before the Affordable Care Act. Because those people, along with the red slices up at the top there, that was the uninsured population of the U.S. before the ACA. I'm going to get back to that in a minute, of course. You got those little yellow sections there. That is the individual market, the non-ACA individual market. That is people who are, like myself, who are self-employed, who are not covered by employer insurance, who go directly to Blue Cross or Aetna or Humana or Total Healthcare or whoever and buy a policy directly. And before the ACA, that was around 10 or 11 million people across the country. Then you have a little slice there, number 18, that's miscellaneous. That's like the Indian Health Service, student plans at some universities, and just a mishmash of other oddball programs. So again, before the ACA, and then the red sections are uninsured. No coverage of any sort whatsoever. If you combine the red sections and again those blue sections there, before the ACA, that was the uninsured population of the country. It was around 48 million people, give or take, depending on your stores. Now, since the ACA, the biggest change is some of those red sections turn blue, and what those are is the main chunks there are the exchanges, that is healthcare.gov and the other exchange websites, where people signed up on the individual policies, but through the exchanges, and received financial aid to do so. The other big chunk there is ACA Medicaid, that is people who have been added to the Medicaid rolls thanks to the ACA's expansion of the program, okay? And again, there's a couple of other little slices there as well. But that's the biggest single change is that it has basically sliced the uninsured rate in the country nearly in half since around 2012. But the reason I bring this up is not just to give you an overview, but also to explain why when you hear people defending the law or complaining about the law, like they'll say, oh, the premiums are going up so much. The problem here is for the people who are receiving subsidies, in the blue section there, for them, when the premiums go up, their subsidies tend to go up as well to match. So that's around 9 or 10 million people who the premiums may go up, but the tax credits go up to match, and so they're really not seeing those increases. The problem, the people that you're hearing screaming about, oh, double-digit rate hikes and so on, are in the yellow section, because those are people who are enrolled through the individual market, but they are earning too much, or for other reasons, they are not receiving any financial aid. And those are the people who have to pay 100% full price. They're not subsidized in any way, and those are the ones who are getting hit with the rate hikes. And the thing, if you look over in the green section there, what most people don't understand is if you're covered through your employer, your health insurance is heavily subsidized. You just don't see it because it is tax exempt for your employer. So they can offer, an $8,000 policy to their employees, and they don't have to pay taxes on it. And so they may cover, $5,000 of that, and so you may only be paying $3,000. The full price is $8,000, but you don't see the other $5,000 because it's tax exempt. It's considered part of your compensation. So that's basically what the tax credits from the exchange policies are. It's basically the equivalent of the employer tax rate for employer coverage. So, okay, Amanda? Okay. So, the three-legged stool. This is the easiest way to explain how the concept of the Affordable Care Act. Think of it as a three-legged stool in, say, a bar, right? You basically have, the first thing that they wanted to do was, that President Obama and the Democrats, what they wanted to do, and this is based on Romney Care in Massachusetts, is that they said, okay, before the ACA, on the individual, if you're covered by an employer plan, most employer plans, they will cover any employee. If you're hired by the company, you're there for a few months, you get covered. And they don't, you're covered regardless of your medical history in most cases. On the individual market, it wasn't like that. You had to fill out a laundry list of forms giving your entire medical history, and every paper cut or bump, or scraped knee or whatever you've ever had in your life, you have to enter all of that, and they could just say, nah, we're not going to take you. So basically, it was risk aversion. The insurance companies were trying to avoid insuring anyone who they thought might actually cost, a lot to insure. People with cancer, diabetes, and so forth. So you had to fill out medical history, and then it was up to them. They could cherry pick their enrollees, which is part of the reason why premiums, used to be somewhat lower, because it was a fairly low risk. They were basically insuring healthy people for the most part. And if you had serious conditions, chronic conditions, expensive conditions, you were thrown on the bus. You were kicked to the curb. In a lot of cases, you were simply uninsurable. So the first thing was, I said, okay, we want to make sure that the insurance companies have to cover everyone, that they can't discriminate against people who actually need their services. And that is called guaranteed issue, right? That means that they have to cover them. Along with that is something called community rating, which means that not only do they have to cover you, they're not allowed to discriminate pricing-wise beyond a certain set of parameters. That is, they can charge older people more than younger people because older people tend to be higher risk, but only within a certain range. It used to be 5 or 6 to 1, so they could charge an older person 5 or 6 times as much as a younger person. The ACA cut that down to a 3 to 1 ratio. They cannot charge you more based on your gender. They can't charge women more than men, and so forth. In fact, the only things that they are allowed to charge, to change the rate for the same policy under the ACA is your age within a 3 to 1 ratio, your location, your geographic location, where you live, because there are different rating areas, and and there is, if you're a smoker, then they can charge you more for that. That's the only medical history thing that they can charge you more for. So that was the first thing. But then they said, okay, well the problem is that if you do that, the insurance companies are saying if you do that, then our costs are going to go sky high because you're going to have a flood of extremely expensive people, coming in and signing up, and they're going to cost massive amounts to insure, whereas healthy people basically aren't going to bother because, hey, I'm healthy, I'm not going to think about the long term, and they're just not going to sign up, so rates are going to go through the roof. So they said, okay, we're going to include an individual mandate, a mandate penalty. This is the thing that everybody hates about the ACA, right? You remember in 2009, 2010, all the Tea Party and all that, the individual mandate. What they said was basically everyone has to sign up, healthy or not, whether you're healthy or sick, you have to sign up for qualifying coverage, or there's a financial penalty. And I'll get to the details on that in a minute. And that way, if you have a bunch of healthy people signing up as well, that helps smooth out the risk pool. So you have a bunch of healthy people helping to sort of balance out the very sick and expensive people to treat, and so that that helps keep rates in hand. But then they said, well, but the problem with that is that you can't force everybody to buy this product when some of them simply can't afford it. And so that's where the tax credits or subsidies come in. They said, okay, if you're below a certain income threshold, the government will chip in. There'll be some tax credits to help you out, to help you pay for it. So that's called the three-legged stool. And then I add a little fourth thing, which is the open times, which is there's also a limited time window for when you can sign up. And this is pretty standard in most corporations. Most companies have an open enrollment period in the fall. Medicare has an open enrollment period. There's a limited time window when you can actually sign up or make changes to your coverage. And then if you miss that time window, then you're stuck with what you have or don't have until the following, for the rest of the year. The reason for that is because if you don't have that, then what happens is you'll have someone who's healthy who never bothers signing up until, because they know that they can wait until they actually get diagnosed with something. And then once they get diagnosed, all of a sudden, oh, let me sign up. And so basically they're gaming the system. So the idea here was it's basically a game of Russian roulette. It says, are you willing to risk 9 months without being covered, so you have this three-month window to do so. And again, this is pretty standard practice in employer coverage. Next. Thank you. Okay, this is actually just what I just went over. Amanda, you just skipped past a bunch of them. No, actually, if you could go back. Sorry. Just real quick. Okay, guaranteed issue, community rating. Okay, go next. So the individual mandate, it's basically a $700, if you don't sign up for a qualifying policy, and there are exceptions, then the charge right now is $700 a year, $695 for adults, half of that per child, or 2.5% of your household income, whichever is greater. And then there is a maximum, there's a cutoff for the maximum, that which is $2,000 or $3,000. The penalty is monthly, so like if you're not covered for 6 months, you only have to pay a penalty for 6 months and so on. And like I said, there are exceptions for hardship, and there's a list of various reasons. Next. Okay, so the tax credits. There are actually two types. Most people only hear about one of these, which is it's called the advanced premium tax credits, or APTC. That is for people whose income is between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty line, which is around $12,000 to around $48,000 for an individual, $24,000 to about $98,000 for a family of 4. If you're in that range, and it's on a sliding scale, and you sign up through the exchanges, through healthcare.gov for a policy, then you receive some amount of financial assistance. And obviously the lower end you get more assistance, the higher end you get less. And it tapers off at the tail end, at the high end. That's to help cover your premiums. The second type that most people don't know about is called cost sharing reduction, or CSR. This is sort of a second booster shot of assistance for people who are at the lower, between 100 and 250% of the federal poverty line, and that helps cut down their deductibles and co-pays, all the other out-of-pocket stuff. And there's about 6 or 7 million people with that. There's about 9 or 10 million with the premium subsidies. But again, these are sliding scales. As you move up the income level, they drop, and then eventually they cut off at the top end. But again, the key to this is, again, that it's not a locked in stone thing. As premiums change, the subsidies change the math. The credits change accordingly. So if the rates go up, the tax credits go up. If in a few cases your premiums actually drop, your tax credits may drop as well. So it goes up or down accordingly. Next. Right, okay, so the time window in 2014 when they launched, you remember it was a big technical mess in October 2013. The website was a mess, there were all sorts of problems. The original one was a full 6 months because it was so new and nobody knew anything about it, and they were getting used to it. They gave 6 months, and then they tacked on an extra 2 weeks on top of that because of the technical problems at the beginning. By the following spring, they had sorted most of them out, so they gave a little extra time. 2015, it dropped down to 3 months, which is what it's supposed to be. And then, again, it's been 3 months each year since then, up through this past year. And starting this fall, and this I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but one of the changes that Tom Price is, the new HHS secretary, is trying to put into place is that they're going to cut it in half again to only about 6 weeks. So, okay, next. Okay, these I'm going to skip through real quick. These are basically just graphs showing how many people were signing up. The first year, 2014, about 8 million people signed up. And about 6.7 million were still enrolled because there was some attrition throughout the year. 2000, you go back? Sorry. So it was about 8 million in 2014. It was around 11.7 million in 2015, 12.7 million in 2016. You know, ramping up, and then we came to this past year where it actually dropped off a bit to about 12.3 million people who signed up. So around 13 million seemed to be sort of the, sort of hitting the ceiling about how many people were signing up. They were hoping it would be more than that, and there are reasons for that I won't go into, but so okay, so that's the exchanges. Then you've got the other major piece that people do know about, which is the Medicaid expansion. Every state has a bunch of different criteria before the ACA of who qualifies for Medicaid, and it varies from state to state. It varies depending on if you're a pregnant woman, or if it's a newborn child, or an adolescent, or there's all these different categories, and the income threshold varies up and down pretty widely. What the ACA did was it said, okay, we're just going to say everyone 138%. It doesn't matter if you're a parent or not, how old you are, whatever. If you're below 138% of the federal poverty line, which is I think around it's around $16,000 a year for an individual, you're eligible for Medicaid. And it was supposed to be all 50 states, and then there was a Supreme Court case, and they said it has to be up to the state, and 31 states said yes, 19 states said no. All 19 of those states are Republican controlled, big surprise. And that's around 2.6 million. So there are about 2.6 million people who fall into what's called the Medicaid gap. Now what that means is, remember I told you that those subsidies, the tax credits on the exchanges, those are designed for people between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty line. What if you're at 99%, but you live in a state where, like, say, Alabama, where if you are an adult without children, you only qualify for Medicaid if you make under 13% of the federal poverty line. That's about $30 a week. So if you make somewhere between that and 100%, you're in trouble because you make too much to qualify for Medicaid, but you don't make enough to qualify for the tax credits. Now there's a simple fix for that, but it requires an act of Congress. They won't do it. So those people are caught in the Medicaid gap. They basically have no options, no viable financial options for coverage whatsoever. As of October 2013, just before the expansion launched, there were around 57 million people in Medicaid. As of October 2016, a few years later, there were about 74 million people. It's a net increase of about 17 million people have enrolled in Medicaid on top of those who already covered through it. Most of that, not all, but most of that is through the expansion program. So that's a lot of people. It may include some here, I don't know. But, so yeah, that's a big chunk of people. Let's go next, please. There's a bunch of other stuff, as I said. So those are the two main things people know about. But there's also other things that the ACA did, which apply, for the most part, to everyone, even if you're covered through your employer. For example, no lifetime or annual limits on coverage. A lot of pre-ACA plans would have a cap of, say, $100,000 or $500,000 or maybe $1 million about how much that they would cover, and once you got past that, you were cut off. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but anyone who's undergone chemotherapy, there's a lot of it, or expensive, prescription medications knows you can hit those caps within a few years. In a case of a premature baby, the neonatal unit, you could hit that. There are some cases where parents were hitting their newborn child's lifetime limit before they even took them home to the hospital. you know, that they're less than like a month old and they've already hit their lifetime limit. So ACA said we're removing that cap, and that again applies to employer plans as well. All plans have to meet a certain minimum threshold to qualify as actually being called health insurance. Before the ACA, there were a lot of places, like the best example is McDonald's. McDonald's used to have a policy that they offered for employees. It was only $50 a month, you know, hey, cheap. It covered a grand total of $2,000 a year in benefits of any sort. That was it. The ambulance ride to the hospital, you know, hospital could be $2,000. So basically, it was like 1 day in the hospital and no treatment. It basically said that in order to be counted as health insurance, it has to actually cover, you know, surgery and ambulances and, you know, hospital stays and that sort of thing. There's a list of essential benefits that they all have to cover to be actually called that. The other big thing people know about, young adults staying on their parents' plan until they're 26. A lot of states actually already had a similar law, but it was kind of scattershot. The ACA made it across the board, nationally, all 50 states. And again, that applies to both employer and individual plans. Threw in some stuff for Medicare. The Part D donut hole, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. Medicare Part D, when it was passed back in the Bush administration, there were some gaps, some glitches, and this filled one of those regarding paying for prescription medications. And so they sort of threw a bunch of extra stuff in that just needed to be done, but just they didn't have anywhere else to put it, so they just sort of globbed it onto the ACA. The point being that if you repeal the law, you're not just taking away the exchanges or, you know, taking away Medicare expansion. There's also all this other attached stuff that would also go if you were to do a full repeal without taking that into account. And so again, like I said, if you're on Medicare, you're over 65 or on Medicare, you may not think that repealing the ACA would apply to you. Guess what? It would. And a whole mess of other stuff. Okay, so how many people are at risk if they were to repeal the law? I made up this spreadsheet, and I know you can't see the little numbers there, but I made up this spreadsheet over the last couple months, and my conclusion was it would probably be around 24 million people all told. That included around 8 million or so on the exchanges. Not everybody in the exchange, because again, if you're paying full price or near full price and you could lose those tax credits, yeah, you could probably squeak by. You'd grumble, but you could probably deal with it. But for about 8.5 million people, taking that away would be devastating. They would have to drop the plan. Nearly 15 million on Medicaid because of the expansion program and a few other related issues. And it's about 750,000 people on a special program called Basic Health Program. It's only active in Minnesota and New York, but that would be taken away as well. Add it all up, it's about 24 million people. By an amazing coincidence, the Congressional Budget Office just yesterday released their analysis, and again, I'm going to get a little ahead of myself, but the number that they came up with for if you were, now my 24 million was based on the assumption of full repeal with immediate effect, like, you know, tomorrow, and zero replacement, nothing replacing it whatsoever, and I figured, about 24 million. Guess what the CBO said would happen if they were to do this weird, messed up repeal and replacing it with their, you know, Republican Paul Ryan's plan? They concluded that, yeah, about 24 million people would still lose their policy, which basically means, well, thank you, but the larger point is that what this Congressional Budget Office just said is they're literally saying that they might as well have just repealed it by itself and not replace it with anything, and it's just as useless, essentially. It's just as useless and harmful to just, you know, so anyway.
But then the rich don't get their tax credit.
Well, exactly. That's the main difference is that, and then I'm getting to that. So, next. So in Michigan specifically, there's around 320,000 people statewide who are enrolled through the exchange. Of those, because of attrition and people paying full price and so forth, I figure around 216,000 people would most likely lose their coverage on the exchanges, plus an additional 646,000 Michiganders on the Medicaid expansion program, which, by the way, is called, in Michigan, it's branded as Healthy Michigan. Governor Snyder and the Republicans take great pride in talking about how awesome and healthy Michigan is. They always fail to mention that's Obamacare. It's the same program, it's just been rebranded. Add it all up, it's around 860 60,000 Michiganders, or about 8 or 9% of the entire state's population, who are at risk of losing their health care coverage. In Oakland County specifically, it's around 31,000 on the exchange. That includes me, my wife, our 11-year-old son, and around 54,000 through the Medicaid expansion program, or around 85,000 Oakland County residents. Next. Amanda? About my congressional district. This was a little trickier to suss out, but as far as I can tell, in the 11th Oakland County, it's you got the 11th. Oh, this was I did this for Farmington Hills. So in the 11th Trots district, it's around 75,000 total. In Brenda Lawrence's, the 14th district, it's about 73,000 in those two districts. And I have on the website ACA.net, I have a breakout of every county, every congressional district, and so on, nationwide. But the point is, we're talking about a whole lot of people here. All right, 7 or 8% of the population in most cases. Next. Okay, just coming back here again to this little pie chart. So again, I don't remember why I did this, but all right, skip, next. Okay, so, right, I wanted to, so those slices at the end, the red slices, who are the remaining uninsured? One of the important things, this is one of the lies that you've heard a lot from the Republicans is, there's still 30 million people uninsured, Obamacare sucks. The ACA never promised 100% coverage. It was never intended to be 100%. It was never meant to be universal. It was never claimed to be. There was always going to be some people who were still uninsured. Its goal was to expand the number of people covered as much as possible without and also stop people from going bankrupt trying to pay for it. This is from the Kaiser Family Foundation. It's a breakout of who the remaining uninsured are, and there's different chunks here. The thing you got to remember is a big chunk of these people who are still uninsured include, for example, undocumented immigrants. They are not legally allowed to enter into Medicaid. They're not legally allowed onto Medicare. They're not legally allowed to buy private plans through the exchanges. Even at full price, they're just not allowed to. So you can't really blame the ACA for not covering them when it's not legally allowed to in the first place. You've also got, as I mentioned, those 2.6 million people in the Medicaid gap. Those are people in the 19 states that never expanded Medicaid. You can't blame the ACA for not covering those people when it was the Republican governors and legislatures who refused to expand the program. There are, it turns out, surprisingly, there's a good number of several million people who adults and children who do qualify for Medicaid and the CHIP program, even without the ACA. They just never did. They just didn't know, either they didn't know they qualified or they were embarrassed because maybe there's for some people there's, a pride thing involved, whatever, but they haven't signed up yet. And it's, it's like voter registration. You can be legally eligible to vote, but if you don't register, you're not going to vote. And then there are several million people who fall into other categories where there is definitely some work that needs to be done. Next, please. There are some legitimate problems with the ACA. Again, number one, Medicaid gap. 19 states didn't expand. That's a problem. Solution: get them to expand. I mean, if you can get a Democratic governor or legislature in Oklahoma, be my guess. But until that happens, not much you can do there. I'm going to skip past. There are some real problems, but again, I don't want to spend too much time on all this. Okay, so who is the ACA working for, and who isn't it? I'm focusing here specifically on again, Medicaid and the tax credits structure for the exchanges. This is a breakout by income level. And I tried to do sort of a color-coded thing here. As you can see, you've got sort of the dark green sections are people where they're doing fine. The light green they're getting enough help that at least they're able to handle it. Yellow section is where they're getting very skimpy, assistance, and the pink section at the right, those are people who just aren't getting any or barely any assistance. The presumption was that they didn't need it, was that if your income level was that high, that you really shouldn't need any help. The reality is that costs have gone up more than expected, and as a result, maybe that needs to be bumped up some. But in general, it flows from dark green at the lower income level up to, pink at the right, as you would expect, because the higher your income, the less assistance you should need, all right? Next. Okay, so what's in Trump care? Okay, sorry. Thank you. Its official title is the American Health Care Act, or the AHCA. Number one, it defunds Planned Parenthood. Shouldn't have anything to do with this, but Republicans love defunding Planned Parenthood, so they did, or they would, or they will if it passes. Number two, it defunds the Medicaid expansion program. Now that officially would not kick in until 2020. They give like a 2-year, gap there. But after that, the way it would work is they would cut off the funding for any new enrollees. So if you're already enrolled through the expansion program, you aren't kicked off immediately, but through attrition, no one new is allowed on. And if you leave the program for even a month, you're not allowed back on. Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of Medicaid enrollees who are seasonal employees. They may work at a ski lodge or whatever half of the year, and then they're on Medicaid the other half because they're unemployed or whatever. If they leave Medicaid, they are not allowed back on. Which means that for a lot of people, the Republicans have managed to come up with a policy that would discourage them from attempting to find a higher paying job or additional hours because of the fear of being kicked off of Medicaid. I don't know how Republicans managed to do that, but they did. It also impacts non-ACA Medicaid, traditional Medicaid, by converting the funding for that into what's called a block grant, or a per enrollee amount, which basically means right now, up until now, as medical costs go up and Medicaid costs go up, the federal government's percentage, the amount of money that they contribute towards Medicaid, increases to match. Under this Republican block grant program, each state would get a set amount of money per enrollee, and it would stay at that level and would only go up at, I think it's 1% or something like that per year. It would go up at a very, very gradual rate, whereas medical costs would go up at a much faster rate, which means that year after year after year, the funding from the federal government would be cut relative to costs, which means that the state would either have to pick more people off of Medicaid or slash the services that are provided to enrollees. It wipes out those cost-sharing reductions I mentioned to help keep your deductibles low if you're in a lower income group. It wipes those out, which means that someone earning $20,000 a year who might have been paying maybe $500 of their deductible on a $5,000, the policy is $5,000 deductible, maybe they were only paying $500 of it, now they got to pay the full $5,000. That's a quarter of their gross income. It changes, this is one of the dumbest ideas they came up with, it changes the tax credit structure for the premium tax credits. Under the ACA, it's based on your income, right? As your income increases, your credits decrease. Which makes sense. Under Trump care, it changes this to a flat age-based system. If you are 18 to 29, I believe, you receive $2,000. And then it goes up, it's at 2,025, 3,035, up to, if you're 60 to 64 years old, you get $4,000 flat, regardless of your income. Now, there is an income cutoff at $75,000 in income, but below that, it's a flat amount. Now, for some people, that will actually help. That will actually be more than they're getting now, which is nice. If you're young and healthy, you'll actually get a little bit more assistance. However, if you are older, you will receive considerably less than you are under the Affordable Care Act. Well, that's yeah. And that actually is what you just said. As I mentioned, that earlier table where I was showing you with the color coding, you notice that you get up towards the 400% line, that's where you start running into a problem. I mean, basically the problem is that the tax credit just wasn't enough. They should have been beefed up some. Instead, this goes the other way. I mentioned the age band, that 3-to-1 ratio. It would change that to a 5-to-1 ratio, which means that an older person could be charged up to 5 times as much as a younger person. Now, you notice I mentioned that the age-based tax credits range from $2,000 to $4,000. So that's a 2-to-1 ratio on how much assistance you get. But the premiums can be up to 5 times as much. Does anyone see a problem with that? Your premium can be 5 times higher, but the amount of help you get is only twice as high, which becomes a bit of a problem as you get older. Here's the other fun thing. The one thing that the Tea Party has been, and the Republicans have been screaming about for 7 years now is the individual mandate, right? They hate it. Get rid of it. Well, Trump Care does get rid of it. It does wipe out the individual mandate. You no longer have to pay $700 if you don't sign up. However, it replaces it with its own mandate, which they call the continuous coverage clause, which means that you don't have to sign up. If you want to go without coverage, you can do so. But if you do decide to sign up, you have to pay a 30% surcharge for a full year on your health insurance premiums. So if it's a $10,000 a year premium, you have to pay an extra $3,000, and so on. It amounts to the same thing in practice, except that it's actually less effective at its goal, which, remember, the goal is not to penalize people, the goal is to get them to sign up, right? The problem is that under this scheme, you could go 10 years, let's say you're young, you're healthy, you're lucky, you could go 10 years without ever getting covered, and then you get diagnosed with something serious, and you say, oh, well, I guess I gotta pay a 30% charge for 1 year, but it's still worth it because even that $3,000 is still better than a $100,000 chemo bill, right? Which means that it's less effective at getting people to sign up, but it's also more onerous towards people who are genuinely sick. They somehow managed to come up with a scheme that's actually worse in both ways. It also, here's the fun part that Vicki mentioned. Here's the reason for this bill. The reason for all this nonsense is that they wanted to give a big fat tax cut to the super rich. And to do that, they wipe out half the funding of the ACA. The ACA is funded, about half of it is funded by savings, about $700 billion in savings on Medicare Advantage overpayments. Basically, they were overpaying Medicare Advantage carriers by to the tune of about $700 billion over a 10-year period. They wiped that out. And the other half was a variety of taxes, but the biggest ones were a 3.8% investment tax on people who make more than $200,000 per year, and a 0.9% Medicare payroll tax, also for people who make about $250,000 and up. Those people didn't like that, so they issued the command, get rid of it. And that's what this is all about. This has nothing to do with health care. The Trump care, the Ryan care, whatever you want to call it, has nothing to do with improving health care or improving people's coverage or any of that. It has to do with getting rid of these taxes on rich people. Because everything else, as you may have noticed, everything else, all the other changes that I mentioned they're just a different version. It's a worse version for the most part, but basically it's a different version of the same thing. You still have the tax credits, you still have the penalty, you still have, for the moment anyway, you still have the requirement to cover pre-existing conditions and so forth. It's just been retuned in a worse way, but this is the big change, is it wipes out these taxes. The other thing is, so if you wipe out half the funding, about $800 billion in funding, how are you going to pay for it? Well, the way you pay for it is by kicking 24 million people off their policies. If they're not on their policies, if you kick them off of Medicaid, you don't have to pay for Medicaid. If you kick them off their individual plans, you don't have to pay the credits. Problem solved, Now they did throw in one other thing. There is one thing they threw in. They threw in $100 billion over a 9-year period, or about $11 billion per year, to go, basically just give money to the states and say, do something with it to help keep costs down. We don't care what, just do something. And that sets up things like high-risk schools and reinsurance programs and so forth. except that those are still severely underfunded for those program needs. Next. So how does Trump care change this? At the top, you see the table I showed you earlier, and you notice it goes from green on the left, dark green on the left, up to pink on the right. As you move up the income scale, oh, by an amazing, well, as it happens, at the bottom here, this is what happens under Trump care. It completely reverses that. If you're below about 250%, you're basically screwed. If you're above about 500%, up into the six-figure range, you actually get a nice, several $1,000s that you may or may not necessarily need. And if you're above $200,000, you get tens of thousands of dollars in tax cuts that you didn't really need. Next. So that brings us to today, or yesterday, the Congressional Budget Office. They released their scoring of the plan. And next. Amanda? Next. Amanda? Thank you. CBO score, their conclusion was about 14 million people, if this plan was put into place this year, about 14 million people would lose their coverage next year alone. That would rise by an additional 10 million over time by 2026, for a grand total of 24 million people losing their coverage over the next 9 years. Just about everybody who loses their coverage would be low-income people, people on Medicaid, people, people with low incomes, working class, and so forth. For the most part, Trump's base. By 2026, the total number of uninsured, they project, would be about 52 million people, up from the current 28 million. 52 million is more uninsured people than we had before the ACA. And in general, as I said, the age-based tax credits, this is from the CBO, would be a bit better for middle-class people in the 300 to 500% range, let's say, but it would be devastating to the low income and the elderly. And I mention the elderly because next, this table, and it's hard to see here, this is from the CBO's scoring. They gave some examples of people at different ages, 21, 40, or 64, with a couple different incomes. So let's say you're a 21-year-old. Next. I just highlighted it here. Let's say you're 21 years old, your income's about $26,000 a year. Your premium, let's say that your full year premium is about $5,000. Under the ACA, you get about $3,400 in credits. So the net you actually pay is only $1,700. Under the Trump care plan, 21-year-old, your premium would probably be a bit lower, but you would receive less in credits, and you'd pay about save a little bit less. You'd actually do a little bit better, about $1,400 a year. So okay, he's doing a little bit better. If you have an income, let's say you're 21 years old and you're making $68,000 a year, not many 21-year-olds do, but right now under the ACA you wouldn't receive anything, but hey, you're making $68,000 a year at 21. Under Trump care, you would still receive $2,400. Next, here's the problem. Let's say you're 64 years old and you earn $26,000 a year. Under the ACA, your premium, a typical premium would be around $15,000 a year, but $13,600 of that is covered by credits, by tax credits. So you still only end up paying about $1,700 a year. However, under Trump care, your premium would be higher because remember, they can charge 5 times as much now. It would be almost $20,000 a year gross. You would only receive about $4,900 in tax credits, and you would pay $14,600 per year on a $26,500 a year income. That's about, 60% of your gross annual income. And that's really what it all comes down to, is the tax credits are a joke. They were not thought out. They were not planned in any way. And this, by the way, is why it's not just Democrats and progressives and such who hate this bill. You may have heard a lot of conservatives can't stand it either for different reasons, but the main thing is that they don't like the fact that anybody's getting any assistance whatsoever. What they want is to just repeal it and not give anyone anything and give free rein to the insurance companies to do and charge whatever they want, whoever they want. Next. So I'm wrapping this up real quick. I know we just got a minute here. And this is the other stuff that would change. The current bill, because it has to be done through the reconciliation process, it's only legally allowed to impact areas that directly impact the federal budget. So there's a bunch of other stuff they want to do, but they're not allowed to. Under this bill, they're calling that phase 3. I forget what phase 2 is, but phase 3, that's the one that would supposedly require 60 votes in the Senate to pass, unless they decide to just nuke the filibuster completely or fire the parliamentarian or whatever. But that includes things like getting rid of the coverage of pre-existing conditions clause, getting rid of the annual lifetime limits clause, allowing junk plans that don't cover much of anything. Next. Amanda?
What's ESI?
Oh, I'm sorry. ESI is employer-sponsored insurance. That's basically group coverage through your employer. It would allow them to charge women more. It would reopen the Medicare Part D donut hole. It would get rid of the free preventative care things which are required under the ACA without any deductible being paid or co-pays, like colonoscopies, cholesterol check, blood pressure checks, federal physicals. Next. Oh, maternity care. That's okay. The list goes on and on. All of this is stuff you're seeing here. These are things that are mandated by the ACA. All of this would be reversed. Free pap smears, HIV, gonorrhea, tobacco cessation program, substance abuse, mental health coverage is required. Under the Trump Care plan, it is no longer required to be covered. What's that? Oh, right, that's right. They can have guns now, too. So there you go. And on, next, and so forth. And there's I could go on and on. This could go on for another 20 pages, but you get the idea. So anyway, so that's where things stand. In terms of legislatively speaking, I'm not sure what the timeline is on that. They are scrambling to slap together something. The bottom line is that the only reason that they're trying to push this through, they know that they have a turd on their hands. They can't get their own caucus to vote for it. They're doing it for two reasons. Number one is they want to give the tax break to the rich. And number two is that they want to be able to say, we repealed Obamacare. That's really about it. They want to pass something so that they can say to their base, after 7 years, we actually repealed it. There you go.
That was great. Depressing as all hell, but it was great.
It was. It's very good.
Does anybody here, we can take 2 questions? No questions, okay. Oh, we do have questions. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I heard on Free Speech TV a term called the lost tunnel. The lost tunnel.
I'm sorry?
The term the lost tunnel, which was a part of Obamacare that would cover the losses of the insurance companies.
Risk corridor. Ah, risk corridor. Risk corridor.
Risk corridor.
Yes.
Okay, I'm close.
Okay,
so
yes.
I understand Marco Rubio
Yes.
was able to get rid of that in the Senate.
Yes.
So would you elaborate?
And again, I know what time.
Go ahead.
Okay, so risk corridors. It gets a little messy, but basically here's the deal. They knew, when they passed the ACA, they knew that because they were making so many changes to the insurance industry and the actuarial tables, because the insurance industry, they spent 50, 60 years doing things a certain way, and they had actuaries who would crunch the numbers and figure, here's how we cherry pick the least expensive patients and all that. And so they were throwing that all out and saying, well, you got to cover everybody now. So they figured, well, it's a little unfair, even though insurance companies are guilty of a lot of sins, it's a little unfair to totally make them basically throwing darts blindly. So they set up several programs that were set up to sort of smooth the way. And the idea was they knew things were going to be rocky for the first few years. So they set up a couple of programs, one of which is called the Risk Corridor Program, which basically meant that for the first 3 years, 2014, 15, 16, and the insurance companies basically had to, it was sort of insurance for insurance companies. They would chip in money essentially into a central pool, call it, and the insurance companies which lost money would receive a chunk, they would be reimbursed for a portion of their losses if they lost more than a certain threshold. And the insurance companies that made a profit would have to pay into it, right? And the idea was, and they didn't know at the time, they thought there was possibility at one point, they thought that the government, and the thing was that if more came in than went out, the government got to keep the difference. So there was some thinking that they may actually make a profit off of this, the feds. But the catch to that is that if more went out than came in, then the feds would have to cover the difference, right? Well, they launched the exchanges, they launched the program, and in December 2014, there was something called the Cromnibus Bill, you may remember. It was basically a continuing resolution to keep the federal government funded. And there were a bunch of amendments, and it was a must-pass, it had to pass before midnight, New Year's Eve, or the federal government was shut down. Well, there were some amendments crammed in there, and one of them was Marco Rubio threw in an amendment that would basically say that the risk corridor program could not, that the federal government could not spend any money on it, that the only money that could be spent out was whatever came in. And it had to pass. It was attached to this larger bill. The Democrats basically were held hostage. They said, fine, okay, we'll pass it. So it was passed, it was signed, and then they basically crossed their fingers and hoping to God that more came in than went out. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. About $3 billion in losses, about $500 million in profits came in. So the followings, and the thing is, you had to wait several months for all the numbers to come in, all the dust to settle. So around July or August of 2015, it was announced that only 13 cents on the dollar was being paid out to any of the carriers that had lost money. Well, if you're a big kahuna like Blue Cross or whatever, you can absorb that. You've got billions in the bank, you're making a lot of money in other, in your other divisions. It wasn't that big of a deal for them. It was annoying, but they could deal with it. But what if you're a little startup? What if you're a little guy? Like, say, a cooperative, which was also set up. There were 23 of them set up by the ACA, a public-private partnership, basically a non-profit small insurance company. There were 24 of those set up by the ACA. They were just starting up. The only funding they had was whatever they were given as their initial seed money. And if they lost money, they were counting on that risk corridor payment to come in the following year. It wasn't there. They lost, let's say you lost $100 million, you got $13 million, or that you were owed, you only got $13 million in. So you saw this in the fall of 2015, and I was writing about this daily. They were falling like dominoes. About a dozen of them went down within like a 2-week period. It was devastating because they didn't have the cash flow. They didn't have enough money on hand to carry them, to tie them over the following year. 800,000 people were enrolled in those co-ops. They all got kicked off their plans, had to shop around. It was a nightmare. And all of this was done, Marco Rubio did all of this just so he could look good for his presidential run, which failed anyway.
So in other words, all the larger insurance companies have control.
Yes, that's the other thing, is that reduced competition, less competition.
Good prices.
Yeah, that was part of it. Again, I'm not going to. There were other reasons why the co-ops had other problems as well, but that one was a complete they just had the rug yanked out from under them. I believe to this day that at least half of them, I suspect, would still be around if not for that one incident. And then there's one more.
No.
Okay.
That was a long question.
Sorry.
Long answer. So we have to, and we're on this tight 8:30 schedule. I want to let everybody know. You ask him questions after. We're going to we ordered some pizzas for you guys to nibble on downstairs in the back. So we're going to wrap up this meeting with good and welfare. First of all, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. He was great. We're going to wrap it up with good and welfare, and then Tony is going to do the 50-50. So good and welfare, line up in a line here. Make it fast. No good and